I hadn't seen Tyler in over a year, not since he moved into that lakeside house his parents gifted him after graduation. When he invited me for a long weekend, I said yes without hesitation. I needed a break. My apartment felt like a cage, and my long-distance relationship with Jonas had begun to feel like a ghost I kept chasing. Disappearing messages, cold replies, promises broken with silence. Tyler greeted me at the front door with the same warmth he always had. Bear hug, big smile, no judgment. "What's mine is yours," he said as I stepped inside. "We've got beer, a full pantry, and if you don't mind sharing a bathroom, Nico's here for the weekend too." I paused. Nico, Tyler's younger brother. The last time I saw Nico, he was awkward and lanky, still in high school, constantly hiding behind hoodies and headphones. Now, as he stepped into the room with a casual, "Hey man," I barely recognized him. Broader shoulders, a quiet confidence in the way he moved. His smile didn't seem boyish anymore. It lingered. "Eli, right?" he said. "Didn't think I'd get to see you again." "Same," I replied, trying to sound casual, though something about his eyes made my skin hum. He held eye contact a little too long, just long enough to feel intentional. The first night passed in a haze of grilled food, old stories, and lake air. Tyler was always the talker, so most of the conversation spun around him. But I couldn't ignore Nico. He sat across from me at dinner, fingers lazily tracing the condensation on his glass, watching me like he was listening to something I wasn't saying out loud. Later, by the bonfire, I found myself sitting next to Nico while Tyler stepped inside to grab more drinks. "So Jonas isn't here?" Nico asked casually. I glanced over. His tone was light, but I sensed curiosity behind it. "No, he's working. Always working. Must be tough," he said, poking the fire with a stick. "Being in something where you feel alone." I didn't respond. Not directly. But I didn't need to. The crackling fire filled the silence, and Nico didn't press. We stayed up until the flames died down. Tyler went to bed first, and I followed shortly after, slipping into the guest room and letting the quiet of the house settle around me. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, scrolling through messages Jonas hadn't answered. It was like texting a version of someone that no longer existed. I tossed the phone aside and pulled the sheets tighter around me. That's when I heard the door click open. At first, I thought it was Tyler. Maybe he forgot to grab something from the linen closet. But then the door closed softly, and I heard slow, deliberate footsteps. The mattress dipped beside me. I froze. I turned my head slightly, heart suddenly hammering in my chest. The room was dark, but I knew that scent, fresh linen and something like cedar wood. "Nico." He didn't say anything, just lay down. I whispered, "What are you doing?" He exhaled, slow and steady. "Couldn't sleep." I stayed still. My thoughts raced. I wanted to ask 100 questions. Does Tyler know? Do you think this is okay? But my lips stayed shut. Nico's arm brushed mine under the covers. Warm skin. Intentional or not, I couldn't tell. But he didn't move away. And neither did I. I stared up into the dark, unsure what this moment was or what it would mean tomorrow. All I knew was that I wasn't alone anymore. Not tonight. The silence between us stretched on, long and delicate. Nico's breathing had slowed, steady and soft, but I could feel the tension radiating off him, like heat trapped beneath the sheets. My pulse throbbed in my ears. I hadn't moved. I couldn't. His arm brushed against mine again, closer this time, firmer. Then he shifted, turning toward me. I felt his breath graze my jaw. "I can go," he whispered, "if you want me to." It was a gentleness in his voice that undid me. Not pushy, not cocky, just raw, vulnerable. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words didn't come. He continued, his voice barely audible, "I saw you tonight. Not the way Tyler does. I saw how tired you looked. How lonely." My chest tightened. "I'm fine," I said, though the lie felt brittle. Jonas's absence had been gnawing at me for months. No calls, no affection, just convenience wrapped in obligation. Nico leaned in. "You deserve to feel something, not ignored." And then, slowly, so slowly, it happened. His lips brushed mine. A pause. like he was asking with silence. My lips answered before I could think. I kissed him back. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't rushed. It was tender, cautious. The kind of kiss that asks for permission and gives space to say no. But I didn't. I couldn't. Something inside me cracked open. I turned toward him, closing the distance between us. Our hands found each other beneath the blanket. Fingers tentative at first, then firmer, bolder. Every touch felt amplified. Every breath felt necessary. He pulled back for a moment. "Are you okay?" I nodded. "Yeah, I just didn't expect this." He smiled faintly in the dark. Me either. For a moment, it wasn't about lust. It was about being seen, heard, touched without needing to ask for attention. No guilt, just presence. We didn't rush. We moved slowly, deliberately. Skin against skin, breath mixing. Our bodies speaking the truths we hadn't voiced aloud. I wasn't thinking about Jonas anymore. Not the texts he never answered. Not the empty phone calls. Not the way he made me feel like a burden instead of a partner. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for someone to show up. Someone was here. Afterward, Nico tucked himself against my side. The room was quiet again, but different this time. Safe. Is this going to ruin everything? I asked, breaking the silence. He didn't respond right away. Only if you think it should. I stared at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My phone buzzed somewhere near the nightstand. I didn't reach for it. I didn't want anything from outside that room creeping in. Not yet. Eventually, Nico fell asleep. His breathing became heavier. His arm draped across my chest like he'd always belonged there. I turned my head, watching the faint outline of his jaw in the dim moonlight leaking through the curtain. The guilt wasn't loud. It hadn't arrived yet. What I felt was something closer to peace and the soft warning of consequence. By the time morning arrived, the bed was cold. Nico was gone. I sat up, confused, a strange emptiness gnawing at my chest. My phone flashed with a message from Jonas. "Jonas, we need to talk. I don't think this is working anymore." I stared at the words. No anger. No begging. Just clarity. Like the thing I had been too afraid to say finally found its voice in someone else's silence. I got out of bed and headed toward the kitchen. Tyler was outside on the deck, talking on the phone. Nico was at the counter, pouring coffee like nothing had happened. He looked up, held my gaze, then walked past me. As he brushed by, he leaned in close and whispered, "Last night wasn't a mistake, unless you wanted to be." I watched Nico disappear into the hallway, his words trailing behind like smoke. "Unless you wanted to be." A part of me wanted to call after him, to demand what this meant, to ask if he'd done this before, to ask if it meant something. But instead, I stood frozen in the kitchen, my fingers curling around the coffee mug he left behind, still warm. Tyler walked back in, laughing at something on his phone. "You two up already?" Man, I slept like a rock. I nodded, my face stretching into a smile I didn't feel. Tyler was oblivious, blissfully unaware that his best friend had just slept with his little brother in the guest room next to his. I was thinking we hit the water later. Tyler said, "Take the kayaks out. Clear our heads." I mumbled something agreeable and excused myself, stepping outside onto the deck, letting the sharp morning air slap me awake. My phone was still buzzing in my pocket, Jonas's message echoing louder than the wind. "We need to talk." I finally opened it. "Jonas, I think we both know this hasn't felt right in a long time. I still care about you, but we're just not what we were. Maybe we never were." The words didn't sting, not the way I expected. They felt inevitable, honest, like I'd been waiting for permission to let go, and now I had it. I texted back. I know. I think we were just holding on out of fear. Be well, Jonas." That was it. No drama. No begging. Just an ending that had already happened long before Nico stepped into my bed. A few hours later, I found Nico alone on the dock, dangling his feet over the water, a notebook in his lap. I didn't know he wrote. "Mind if I join you?" I asked. He looked up, eyes unreadable, then nodded. "Sure." I sat beside him, careful to keep space between us. "I'm sorry if last night Cross a line. I began. He didn't look at me. You don't have to apologize. We were both there. But it was impulsive, I added, and complicated. Everything worth feeling is complicated, he said, finally turning toward me. You don't strike me as someone who lets go easily. I smiled, sad and small. I wasn't always like that. He closed his notebook. Did you love him? I think I loved the version of him that existed before distance, before silence. Nico nodded slowly. And what about now? I looked out over the lake, the sun casting golden streaks across the water. Now, I'm just trying to feel real again. A breeze passed between us. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then Nico asked, almost shyly, if you weren't afraid, would you stay another night? I looked at him, at the boy I once barely noticed, now sitting beside me like he'd always belonged there. There was no promise in his question, no pressure, just an invitation to be present. I'm not afraid anymore, I said. His lips lifted in a soft, knowing smile. That night, after dinner and after Tyler went to sleep, I didn't wait for Nico to come to me. I went to him. No hiding, no confusion, just truth. Simple, imperfect, but finally mine. There were no fireworks, no decorations. Just two people lying side by side, breathing in sync, holding the fragile beginnings of something unexpected. As I lay there, Nico tracing lazy circles on my shoulder, I realized something. It wasn't about what we did. It was about why we did it. Because in that moment, with the past behind us and no promises ahead, we chose to be seen, to be felt, to be here, not out of betrayal, but out of becoming whole again.